So, everyone's been busy talking about Bunny and Lavinia this past week, and it makes sense because those two were officially teased together, and everyone's eyes were on them, and Bunny came yesterday, so no surprise about it. But I feel like a lot of people completely missed something important. Because while the hype was all about Bunny being the first generational style, and Lavinia being confirmed for the next Master Rarity, there's another name that has quietly been, I can say, teased. And I think he could very well be the next style we see after Lavinia. I'm talking about Ikki Niko. Yes, Nico. And before you think I'm just throwing his name out randomly, let me explain. Just a few days ago, one of the lead devs actually asked in the official Discord which style should be added next. It was basically set up as a poll, and the results weren't even close. Nico absolutely dominated. He won with something like a 96% chance, which is insane. To put that into perspective, the second place only got 2%. That's how much the community wants to see Nico. That's not just a win, that's a landslide. And I think when the devs saw that kind of overwhelming demand, they had no choice but to take notice. If the player base is screaming this loudly for one style, it's going to happen sooner rather than later. And honestly, I understand why. Some of the other names in the poll were characters like Zantetsu, Kira, and Aryu. Cool characters, sure, but they don't have the same level of popularity. They don't have the same energy. And when you put them next to Nico, it's obvious why people voted the way they did. Nico has always stood out as one of the most unique defenders in Blue Lock. He's not flashy like a striker, but he is similar to Isagi, if you know what I mean. Because if you remember his way of reading the field, that makes him memorable. So yeah, 96% of people want him. And I think that says everything. And hey, just a quick reminder to quickly hit that subscribe button. And of course, like the video, if you are enjoying my content, because it motivates me to upload daily content for you guys. And just a reminder, if you read my post about me making not only Blue Lock Rivals content, but also an Ink game content, so if you don't mind, I will also make some content about it too, because I kind of love this game. Alright, back into the main topic. Now, of course, this raises the question, when could we see him? My personal guess is that it could be soon, maybe even this month. With Lavinia already locked in for the next update, Nico could come right after. The devs aren't going to ignore a result like that. They know people want him, and they'll want to deliver while the hype is still fresh. So while nothing's confirmed yet, I wouldn't be surprised if we see Nico announced as the next style after Lavinia. But then comes the real question, how do you actually make Nico work in Rivals? Because he's a defender, and defenders are always tricky to design. We've seen this before with Aiku. When Aiku first got his rework, he was way too strong. He was so overpowered that people couldn't even play properly against him. And then, after the nerfs, he basically disappeared. Nobody sees him anymore. He went from being unstoppable to being irrelevant, which is sad. That's the risk with defenders. If they're too strong, they ruin the game. If they're too weak, nobody bothers with them. The balance has to be just right. That's why Nico could be so important. He has the chance to revive interest in defensive styles in Rivals, but only if his kit is designed carefully. He can't be another Aiku situation. He has to be fun to play, impactful in matches, but not impossible to deal with. And that's where suggestions come in. The official Discord actually has a suggestions tab where players can pitch move ideas, and I really think the devs pay attention to that. They might not copy everything word for word, but they definitely look there for inspiration. And when it comes to Nico, there are already some great concepts floating around. Let me share a few that I think would be perfect. First, his base moves. The first one could be called Watchtower. The idea is that it's a rush move that allows Nico to intercept a pass or clear the ball to a teammate, as long as he doesn't get dribbled past. It fits his playstyle perfectly because Nico is all about reading the field and stepping in at the right time. A variation of this move could be when he's off ball, and that version could be called Security Area. In this one, if Nico is near his own box, a small highlighted zone appears around him. If the ball or an opponent enters that zone, Nico instantly clears it to a nearby teammate. Honestly, it feels like Nico will have the same ability that Aiku has, which is territory, so if you want, you can add your suggestion in the comments, And who knows, maybe the devs will see it and take notes to actually implement your suggestion into the game. Next, a move called Incomplete Metavision. Now this is really cool. Unlike Isagi's Metavision, Nico's version wouldn't give him speed boosts or shot power, that's the con. But the pro is that he'd get a bigger slide tackle hitbox, about 5% larger, and he'd be able to see which direction an opponent is facing and where they're about to run. That's genius, because Nico doesn't use Metavision the same way Isagi does. For him, it's more about reading than attacking, and this kind of move would let him predict and shut down plays in a way that feels true to his character. Now let's talk Awakening, because this is where things get even better. Imagine the animation. Nico walks forward as the world around him breaks into panels, almost like manga panels, showing his vision of the field. And he says, "Thank you, Isagi, for showing me how fun it is to play defense to step defenders." That would be such a hype Awakening moment, because it ties directly into his story and his connection to Isagi. Then in Awakening, he could get 2 new moves. The first one could be called Instant Counter. The concept is simple but really stylish. Nico intercepts and then starts passing with his teammates. They weave around defenders, moving the ball up the field until they enter the box. The goalkeeper rushes out, but at the last second, Nico passes to a teammate beside him for a guaranteed goal that's so clean. It's not about Nico scoring, it's about him setting up the perfect play, which is exactly his role. The second Awakening move could be a full Metavision sequence. This would be a cinematic move where Nico activates Metavision, and the camera switches to a top-down third-person view of the field. You see everything from his perspective as he predicts the next steps of the opponent. He reads the play, steals the ball by intercepting exactly where they're going, and then launches a pass all the way to the farthest teammate from his own goal. It would be a 3-in-1 move, a steal, a prediction, and a long pass. And with the right animation, it could look incredible, almost like a direct panel from the manga. That's the kind of Awakening cutscene that would make Nico unforgettable. Now let's talk about Rarity. I think 99% of people agree that Nico should be a legendary style. And I'm right there with them. We desperately need more legendary tier characters. Right now, legendary feels empty compared to the other rarities. Adding Nico there would help fill that gap and give legendary players someone exciting to use. Plus, it makes sense. He's popular, but he's not at the same level as someone like Kaiser or Sei. Legendary fits him perfectly. And finally, let's think about the bigger picture. Nico could be the start of a real revival for defenders and rivals. Right now, supports and defenders don't get much love. Don Lorenzo hasn't been shining, Aiku is basically dead after his nerfs, and people mostly focus on flashy strikers. But if Nico is done right, he could show people that playing defense can actually be fun. He could inspire more defensive styles, and he could even lead into the rumored reworks we've been hearing about. Don Lorenzo might be getting a rework soon, and if that happens, maybe Aiku gets a second rework too. Nico could be the spark that brings all of this back. So yeah, while everyone was focused on Bunny and Lavinho, don't forget about Ikki Niko. The community has already spoken, with 96% of people voting for him to be next. The devs can't ignore that, and I think it's only a matter of time before we see him announced. And when he does come, I hope he gets the legendary slot, I hope his moves bring defense back to life, and I hope his Awakening gives us some of the most stylish animations we've ever seen in Rivals. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to leave a like. It really helps the channel grow.